IELTS Academic Writing Task 1. This article will introduce you to IELTS Academic Writing Task 1 and give you a checklist of everything you need to score a Band 7+ on your Task 1 report. If you're taking the General Training IELTS exam, click on the link. In the IELTS Academic Writing Task 1 exam, you will be required to write a report about at least one of the following: a process, a map, a bar chart, a pie chart, a line graph, a table, multiple graphs. This report needs to be at least 150 words and is worth 1/3 of your overall score for IELTS writing. That means that this short report could potentially make the difference between a Band 6 and a Band 7 in the writing exam. Many of our IELTS students used to spend around 80% of their writing preparation on Task 2 before they joined our VIP course. When asked for the reason why, most replied that it was because Task 2 is worth more marks. Although this is true, I don't think anyone that registers for the IELTS exam should feel unprepared when they go into the test center. Choosing to perfect your ability to write a Task 1 report will both boost your confidence and increase your chances of getting the score you need. In my opinion, the key to scoring well in Task 1 is knowing exactly how your report will be marked. You can then use this information to give the examiner what they need to award you a Band 7 or above. The slideshow below has arranged each part of the Task 1 marking criteria into a checklist. By following this checklist, you will give the examiner everything you need to score a Band 7+ in your report. If you don't have an IELTS tutor, this is a great alternative to getting your reports corrected. Feel free to print it out and tick it off as you assess your essays. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Further writing Task 1 resources. Writing Academic Task 1 in 5 easy steps. Task 1 can seem really difficult if you haven't seen it before. This lesson breaks the question types down into 5 easy steps. Charts lesson. This post will cover common problems, different kinds of chart question, what IELTS examiners expect, structure, identifying main features, sample answer. In part 1 of the writing exam, you will likely have to answer a question on charts. This lesson will help you to effectively answer IELTS writing Task 1 chart questions. We will also look at grammar and vocabulary used in IELTS writing Task 1 in a separate post. Common problems. Not knowing which information to include in your answer. Being unaware of what the examiner expects. Including opinion and drawing conclusions. Not using an appropriate structure. Not using appropriate grammar for describing data, trends, and making comparisons. Not using a wide variety of appropriate vocabulary. Failing to write an effective overview. Copying words and phrases from the question. Failing to support descriptions, trends, and comparisons with accurate data. Writing one long paragraph. These common problems will stop you from getting the IELTS band score you deserve. The advice below will help you prevent these problems and achieve your desired score. Different kinds of chart question. All of these charts do one principal thing: represent numbers. Your task is to describe these numbers. There are 4 different types of charts you may have to describe. They are: line chart, sometimes called a line graph; bar chart; pie chart; proportional bar chart. IELTS Task 1 has other questions, including maps, process diagrams, and comparing 2 different charts. These require a different approach, and I will write about these in the future. You also need to ask yourself if it is a static or dynamic chart. A static chart shows data from one time period. A dynamic chart shows change over time. These will obviously require different tenses. What IELTS examiners expect. The key to the speaking and writing tests is to know exactly what the examiners want and give it to them. On the IELTS writing test, you will be assessed on 4 things: task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy. Task achievement. This requires the students to accurately reflect the relevant information in the graph. If you gave your answer to a stranger, would they be able to accurately reproduce the graph? If they could, then you have fulfilled this task. Coherence and cohesion. This part of the marking criteria judges students' ability to produce an answer that is clear, fluent, and easy to understand. Structure, appropriate vocabulary, and good grammar help to boost your score here. Good paragraphing and appropriate use of cohesive devices can also be used to gain a higher score. Lexical resource. This section is all about vocabulary and is often the most misunderstood. It is not about inserting as many long words as possible. It is about choosing relevant, appropriate, and accurate words. You will help your score here by using a variety of vocabulary and not simply copying the words in the question. Grammatical range and accuracy. Obviously, you have to produce grammatically accurate sentences to do well in this section, but it is also about using the appropriate structures. You are expected to use different structures to describe numbers and trends and make comparisons. The most common grammar mistake students make in IELTS Task 1 is not using articles and plurals properly. If at least 50% of your sentences are not grammatically correct, it is hard to score over a band 7. I will refer to these 4 categories in the rest of the post to help you focus on them. Structure. I advise all my students to write a very simple 4-paragraph structure. You can use a different structure if you like, but this one has been proven to be successful and approved by IELTS examiners. Paragraph 1, Introduction. Sentence 1, Paraphrase question. Paragraph 2, Overview. Sentence 1, Overview of first main feature. Sentence 2, Overview of second main feature. Sentence 3, Make general comparison, if appropriate. Paragraph 3, Details of significant feature 1. Sentence 1, Supporting details. Sentence 2, Supporting details. Sentence 3, Supporting details / comparison details, if appropriate. Paragraph 4, Details of significant feature 2. Sentence 1, Supporting details. Sentence 2, Supporting details. Sentence 3, Supporting details / comparison details, if appropriate. We will now look at each paragraph in more detail. Paragraph 1, Introduction. Sentence 1, Paraphrase question. This paragraph should be 1 sentence long and demonstrates your ability to paraphrase. You do this by using synonyms, and we will look at it in more detail below. Paragraph 2, Overview. Sentence 1, Overview of first main feature. Sentence 2, Overview of second main feature. Sentence 3, Make general comparison, if appropriate. An overview is a general statement highlighting the most important information in the table. It should not include any numbers. This is just a summary of the main features. You can use numbers to support your answer in paragraphs 3 and 4. The examiner tests your ability to identify the most important information and then summarize it. Important information could include general trends, increase/decreases, differences, comparisons, etc. More on how to identify significant features and write an effective overview below. Paragraph 3, Details of significant feature 1. Sentence 1, Supporting details. Sentence 2, Supporting details. Sentence 3, Supporting details / comparison details / exceptions, if appropriate. In this paragraph, you take the first general statement from paragraph 2 and support it with details from the graph. The examiner is looking for your ability to choose the correct data and ability to describe data, trends, comparisons, etc. You then repeat this process for paragraph 4, only this time you describe the second sentence in paragraph 2. Paragraph 4, Details of significant feature 2. Sentence 1, Supporting details. Sentence 2, Supporting details. Sentence 3, Supporting details / comparison details / exceptions, if appropriate. That's it. 4 paragraphs and 9 to 10 sentences. Obviously, you need to be flexible and write 8 to 12 sentences depending on the question. There may also be 3 significant features, so you can adjust the structure slightly. You should not write a conclusion. Conclusions are for opinion or discursive essays, and we are not expected to do this in Task 1. This structure will allow you to practice this kind of question over and over, giving you confidence and a consistent model in the exam. Identifying main features. This is often the area most students struggle with, and it is because of one main reason. Students need to prioritize. Prioritizing means you should choose 2 or 3 significant features and write about these. The examiner expects you to do this, and the question will often specifically say select main features. There should be 2 or 3 main features for you to comment on. When students don't do this, they write about every single piece of data they see. This results in them not summarizing. This is a summarizing task, not writing an effective overview and spending too much time on it. How many students do you know who spent too much time on task 1 and didn't finish task 2? Things that you should be looking for include high/low values, erratic values, biggest increase/decrease, volatile data, unchanging data, biggest majority/minority, pie charts, biggest difference/similarities, major trends, notable exceptions. Looking for these things should allow you to pick out the most important features. Another thing students often do is overthink the question. They think that the answer is too obvious and therefore don't write about it. A common main feature is a general increase or decrease. Some students see this as too simple and ignore it together. Don't do this. Reporting obvious or simple features is fine. Sample answer. The diagram shows the levels of charitable donations of people living in Britain, separated by age, between 1990 and 2010. Overall, there was a general decrease in the percentage of people who donated money over the 2 time periods. However, the pattern differs between the 3 age groups before 50 and the 2 age groups after the age of 50. The highest decrease was in the 18 to 25 category, which decreased 10%, from 17% in 1990 to 7% in 2010. 42% of people in the 36 to 50 age group gave to charity in 1990, the highest on the chart, and this fell to 35% in 2010. There was also a significant decline in donations among 26-35-year-olds, from 31% to 24%. The exception to this general trend downwards was among the 51-65-year-olds and over 65s. In 2010, the 51-65-year-olds gave the highest percentage with nearly 40%, and this rose from 35% in 1990. Finally, those over 65 displayed a slight percentage increase of 3%. As you can see, this answer follows the structure I suggested above. Step-by-step instructions. I will now take you through my thought processes and show you how to answer a question like this step by step. Read the question twice very carefully. Look at the data. What data is represented on the axis? What groups are represented? What periods are shown? What are units of measurement? What are the main features? Can I make any comparisons? Are there any exceptions? Make a quick plan using the above structure. Write an introduction by paraphrasing the question. Write a second paragraph, which is a summary or overview of the main features. Support the ideas in the second paragraph with more detail in the third and fourth paragraphs. Ensure I've not repeated any words and used a range of vocabulary. Check for any grammar mistakes and make sure I've got at least 150 words. After writing, I should be able to hand this to a stranger, and they would be able to draw the graph. About Christopher Pell. My name is Christopher Pell and I'm the Managing Director. Introduction. This guide on IELTS Writing Task 1 Maps questions will cover different kinds of map question. Structure. Describing specific changes. Describing general changes. Describing locations. Sample answer. You will also be able to learn some new vocabulary that will help you deal with any Task 1 Maps question. In the IELTS writing test, you might be asked to describe a map in Task 1. This type of question is becoming increasingly popular. In fact, it was on the exam last weekend here in Vietnam and in my opinion, the easiest one to score high marks in if you're prepared. Many students, books, and teachers overlook this type of question, and it is, therefore, a bit of a shock when one comes up. Therefore, if you are prepared, you will probably do better than most of the other students. Different kinds of map question. There are 3 main types of map questions. Describe one map in the present day. Describe 2 maps, one in the present and one in the future. Describe 2 maps, one in the past and one in the present. The first kind is very rare, as it only requires you to use the present simple, and no comparisons can be made. The second kind occasionally comes up and requires you to use present and future tenses. This kind of question is normally about the future development of a town or city. It requires the same vocabulary as the other 2. The third is the most common and will be the main focus of this post. You will normally be shown 2 maps, as above, and asked to select and report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. You will obviously use both present and past tenses to describe the maps and how the town has developed. Also, as this is a man-made process, we will use the passive. Source: Cambridge English Practice Papers. Structure. To describe 2 maps, I advise my students to follow a 4-paragraph structure. Paragraph 1: Paraphrase sentence. Paraphrase question using synonyms. Paragraph 2: Overview. Make 2 general statements about the map. You should describe the maps generally and write about the most noticeable differences between the 2 maps. You could ask yourself the following questions to identify general changes. Is the map more or less residential? Is there more or less countryside? Are there more or fewer trees? Were the changes dramatic or negligible? Were there any major infrastructure improvements? How have the buildings and leisure facilities changed? Paragraph 3: Main body 1. 3 to 4 sentences about specific changes that have occurred. Paragraph 4: Main body 2. Further, 3 to 4 sentences about specific changes that have occurred. You can group information in paragraphs 3 and 4 by time or location, depending on the question asked. Look at the sample answer below to see how I have used this structure. How to describe specific changes. The ability to describe change is crucial to answering these questions. The various buildings and features will normally be labeled for you. You need to work on how to write about how they have changed from the past up until the present day. Tip: You may be asked to describe your hometown in the speaking test. The vocabulary and grammar in this post should come in very useful. Below I will list various buildings, features, and verbs we could use to describe their change. Buildings: demolished, knocked down, flattened, replaced, renovated, built, constructed, reconstructed, developed, extended, expanded, relocated, converted and modernized. Examples: the government demolished the industrial estate and developed a sports ground. They removed the shops and replaced them with a skyscraper. A port was constructed at the edge of the river. The factory in the city center was demolished and relocated to the city's north. The old warehouses were replaced with new hotels. The factory was converted into apartments. Trees and forests cleared, cut down, chopped down, removed, planted. Examples: the forest was cut down and replaced with a shopping center. The trees were cleared to make way for houses. Roads, bridges, and railways lines constructed, built, extended, expanded and removed. The main road was extended, and a new bridge was built over the river. Leisure facilities opened, set up, developed. Examples: a skate park was set up next to the swimming pool. A park was developed beside the forest. How to describe general changes. As this is an IELTS writing task 1 question, we must write an overview, where we generally talk about the main changes between the 2 maps. Below are some examples of general statements we could use to describe change in towns and cities. Over the period, the area witnessed dramatic changes. From 1995 to 2005, the city center saw spectacular developments. The village changed considerably over the period. During the 10-year period, the industrial area was totally transformed. Over the past 20 years, the residential area was totally reconstructed. Over the period, the old docks were totally redeveloped. Between 1995 and 2005, the old houses were rebuilt. The central business district was completely modernized during the period. Pick 2 or 3 of the most noticeable differences in the map and write a general statement for each. This will be your overview paragraph. The more specific changes should be included in your main body paragraphs. How to describe locations. You will also be expected to describe where things are maps and describe where changes have occurred. You can use to the left and to the right, but a better way is to use north, south, east, and west. I normally advise my students to draw the symbols on the question paper if they are not already there. Examples. The forest to the south of the river was cut down. A golf course was constructed to the north of the airport. The houses in the southwest of the town were demolished. The green fields to the city's northwest were redeveloped as a park. The airport in the city's center was relocated to the northeast of the river. The school to the southeast was knocked down and a new one was built to the east of the forest. Finally, you will also be expected to use prepositions of place, e.g. at / in / on / by / beside / to / off / from, to describe where things are. Examples. Dramatic changes took place in the city center. To the town's south is a golf course surrounded by trees. A new school was built next to the swimming pool. The old road running from north to south was replaced by a new motorway. A marina was built on the banks of the river. Sample answer. Source: Cambridge English Practice Papers. Both maps display an island before and after it was developed for tourism. The island is approximately 250 meters long, has palm trees dotted around it, is surrounded by ocean and has a beach to the west. Over the period, the island was completely transformed with the addition of a hotel and a pier. However, the eastern part of the island appears to have been left undeveloped. The most noticeable additions are the hotel rooms. 6 buildings, surrounding some trees, have been built in the west of the island, and 9 buildings have been constructed in the center of the island. A reception building and a restaurant have been developed between the 2 accommodation areas. A pier has also been built on the island's south coast, allowing yachts access to the resort. Apart from the trees, the beach remains the only natural feature to remain relatively untouched. However, it appears to be used for swimming. Next steps. Do you need me to correct? This post will help you answer Task 1 questions that feature more than one graph. A common question on the IELTS Academic Task 1 paper asks you to write about 2 different graphs. Cambridge IELTS 8, page 30. For example, in the question above we are asked to summarize both a pie chart and a table. You could also be given a line graph and a bar chart, a pie chart and a line graph, or any other combination. Students normally score lower on these types of questions, not because they are more difficult, but because they are unfamiliar with this type of question. This lesson will discuss common problems, suggest solutions to these problems, give you a structure that can be used again and again for these questions, analyze a sample answer. Common problems. Writing too much because there is more than one data source. Students tend to write about everything and this causes 2 problems. The first problem is you only have 20 minutes to answer Task 1 questions and you therefore don't have time to write about everything. The second problem is that the question asks you to summarize and report the main features, therefore you have to pick only a few features and report them. In other words, if you write about everything, you have not answered the question properly. Solution: pick 2 of the most obvious features from each graph and limit yourself to writing about these things and these things only. Don't worry about leaving information out, the examiner will be actually looking for your ability to leave insignificant information out because this shows that you are summarizing and only reporting the main features. More on how to do this in the question analysis below. Can't find the main features? This is related to the first point. As stated above, you will be looking for just 2 features in each graph. It is often very difficult for students to decide which features are the most significant. Solution: the first important points should be very visual. By that I mean, you should be able to identify them without looking at the data, just by looking at the graphs. Also, look for extremes, highs and lows, major trends, major changes, from beginning to end, and any obvious comparisons that can be made between either the two graphs or within the same graph. Remember that the most obvious things are the main features. The examiners are not trying to trick you and want you to tell them the very obvious things about the graph, so don't get too clever and try to find something less obvious. Not grouping information into paragraphs. It is very important that you organize your ideas into paragraphs. Paragraphs should be logical and have one main idea. Lots of students fail to do this because they get confused between the multiple pieces of data in the question and group data from different graphs into one paragraph. This is very difficult to read and understand, and you will lose marks if you do this. Solution: don't write about both graphs in one paragraph. Follow the structure I suggest below. Group ideas for each paragraph separately, i.e. one paragraph for one graph. Making comparisons. The question states make comparisons where relevant. The keyword here is relevant, and this is what tricks many students. Sometimes there will be a relevant comparison to make, but in some questions there will not. Some students see two different graphs and they assume that there must be a comparison. They then spend too long looking for a comparison and then write about one even if they don't find one. Solution: if you don't notice a very obvious comparison between the two sources of data, then stop looking for one and don't write about one. It should also be noted that there may also be comparisons to be made between the data in the same graph. Structure. This structure can be used for every question in which you are given two different graphs. Paragraph 1. Sentence 1. Paraphrase question sentences. There will normally be two question sentences and you should combine them into one sentence by using and or while. This will allow you to produce a complex sentence and gain points for grammatical range and accuracy. Paragraph 2. Sentence 2. Overview of two of the main features from graph number 1. Sentence 3. Overview of two of the main features from graph number 2. Sentence 4. Overview of any comparisons if necessary, optional. Paragraph 3. Sentence 5. Details of first main feature of graph number 1. Sentence 6. Details of second main feature of graph number 1. Paragraph 4. Sentence 7. Details of first main feature of graph number 2. Sentence 8. Details of second main feature of graph number 2. Sentence 9. Details of any comparisons, if any. So paragraph 2 should just be an overview of the main features and should not include any details. The details come in paragraphs 3 and 4. Sample answer. Question: the pie chart below shows the main reasons why agricultural land become less productive. The table shows how these causes affected 3 regions of the world during the 1990s. Graphs in picture above. Answer. The pie graph displays the principal causes why farming land deteriorates, while the table illustrates how 3 regions of the planet were affected by these factors in the 1990s. As you can see, all I have done is change the words in the questions using synonyms and then connected them using the word while. We can clearly see from the pie chart that there are 3 primary causes of farmland degradation, and overgrazing is the major one. The table shows that Europe had a far higher percentage of unproductive land compared to the other 2 regions in this time period. For this paragraph I have picked out the main features from each graph and wrote them in a general way. Notice that I have not included any numbers. We will support our ideas with number in the next 2 paragraphs. Also, notice that I am using the present simple for the pie chart because there is no date, and the past tense for the table because it was in the 1990s. The pie chart represents 4 causes, with overgrazing representing the biggest proportion at just over a third. Widespread clearing of trees and the overuse of crops constitute nearly 1/3 and just over a quarter respectively. Here I have varied my language by using synonyms for the causes and proportions and fractions for the data. The table shows that nearly 1/4 of Europe's entire surface had fallen victim to degeneration. Only a small proportion of North America's total land became less productive at 5%, and Oceania was marginally higher with a value of 13%. 151 words. I hope you found the post useful. If you have any Introduction. In Part 1 of the IELTS writing test, you might be asked to describe a process. IELTS Task 1 process questions are not as common as charts or graphs, but they do come up occasionally. They are much easier to answer than the other Task 1 questions, but many people do not prepare for them at all. This is a big risk to take because it does not take long to familiarize yourself with these questions and learn how to answer them properly. This post will show you the different types of process question. A 5-step plan for answering any process question. How to write an introduction. How to pick out the main features and write an overview. How to write about each stage in detail. How to sequence your language. Different types of process question. There are generally 2 different types of process question, natural and man-made. Natural processes include things like the life cycle of a butterfly or frog, pregnancy, the water cycle, or how cows produce milk. You might also be asked to describe a man-made process like how coffee, tea, beer, or wine are made, how cement or bricks are produced, or how an ATM or the internet works. It does not matter if it is man-made or a natural process. The same skills and system we use to answer process questions are the same for both. Writing Task 1 process questions, 5-step plan. To understand the task and quickly make a plan to answer process questions, you should follow the 7 steps below. Understand the process. Find the start and the end of the process. Count how many stages there are and understand what each stage does and the relationship it has with the stage before and after it. Paraphrase the question. Describe what is happening generally in 2 sentences. This is your overview paragraph and I will show you how to write this in more detail below. Divide the process in 2 and write 2 separate paragraphs detailing each stage of the process. Check your work. Understand the process. One of the most challenging things about these questions is having to write about something you have never seen or heard of before. Don't worry, try to remember 2 things. First, the examiner knows that you have probably never seen this process before and you have only 20 minutes to write about it. They do not expect a perfect answer. Just pick out the main features and report them accurately. Second, you can quickly understand any process by asking yourself these questions. Where does the process start and where does it end? How many stages are there? Is it a man-made process or natural process? Is it a cyclical, in a circle, or linear, one start point and one end point, process? Are there any materials that need to be added to the process? What is produced? What does each stage of the process do? What are the relationships between each stage? The processes you will be asked to write about in the IELTS test will not be very complicated and you should be able to easily answer all of the questions above. When you do this, you will completely understand what is happening and you will be able to start writing your answer. Paraphrase the question. Every process question follows the same format. First, it tells you some general information about the process and then it instructs you to summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features. For example, the question above states. The diagram below shows the process of photosynthesis. General information. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features. Instructions. The first thing we need to do in every question is to paraphrase the general information. Paraphrasing is one of the most important IELTS skills to master. We paraphrase a sentence by rewriting it so that the words are different but the meaning stays the same. There are a few different ways we can do this, but the easiest way is to use synonyms and change the word order of the sentence. Synonyms are different words that have the same meaning, for example, woman and female. Let's look at the questions above and paraphrase them. Question 1. The diagram below shows the process of photosynthesis. Paraphrased, the illustration demonstrates how plants produce energy from sunlight. Question 2. The diagram below shows how electricity is produced in a nuclear power station. Paraphrased, the illustration below shows the process of how nuclear power plants make electricity. Every time you see an academic task 1 question, rewrite the question and this should be your first paragraph. We can now move on and write our next paragraph, the overview. Overview of process. The overview is probably the most important paragraph in the whole essay. If you do not write an overview, it is extremely difficult to get a high mark in IELTS Task 1, however, if you learn how to write a good one, you are far more likely to get the score you deserve. Overviews for process questions can be done quite easily by asking yourself a few questions. The answers to these questions will allow you to form 2 overview sentences. Is it a man-made or natural process? How many stages are there? What is produced? Where does it start and where does it end? Is it cyclical or linear? Are any materials added? You might not be able to answer all of these for each process question, but you will always be able to answer enough of them to be able to write a good overview. Detail each stage of the process. Now that we have paraphrased the question and provided an overview, we need to tell the examiner about each stage in more detail. You can say what each stage does, what it produces, if any materials are added, and/or discuss the relationship with the previous or subsequent stages. Sequencing the process. Try to sequence your language and make your details easier to read by using language like firstly, first of all, secondly, after that, from this, where, following that, subsequently, before that, in turn, then. Make sure you know the meaning and grammar of the words and phrases above before you use them. Do not use them if you are not 100% sure about how they should be used in a sentence. Check your essay. You should try to leave 3 to 4 minutes at the end to check and improve your work. Many students do not do this because they feel they do not have enough time. However, it is better to try and get everything done in 15 minutes and then check and refine your work, than do everything in 20 minutes. Things that you should check are: there any spelling or punctuation mistakes? Are the verbs the correct tense? Does the process I describe make sense? Does it match the diagram? Is there any vocabulary repetition we could